Hey, so welcome everybody to another episode of the Becoming Human podcast. Today, I'm really excited. I got a really good friend of mine. We go way back. This is the man, the myth, the legend, your favorite musician's favorite musician. He's a master musician. He's a music teacher. He's a businessman. Introducing none other than the man himself, James DuMaine, aka James DuMaine,
No,
aka James Alfred Hussein DuMaine.
some people never quit.
Welcome, 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 my brother.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for having me today. It's quite the gesture to invite me, so I'm honored.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well, and I'm honored too. So to kind of the set the stage, set the tone for the conversation. Um, in the beginning was the word, or the ohm, depending on what side of the planet you're on,
That's right.
or or the vibration, right? So I'm curious, what was that initial vibration for you that sparked that love of expression through music?
I would have to say that you know it was probably first something that I would not have been able to identify when it happened because it would have been when I was in the womb, and shortly after that, coming out of the womb. And I'm telling you this because I recognize this as a relevant fact, really, with all infants. Notice that a mother, when she speaks softly to her child, causes the child to calm down, right? And so that's because there's a particular tone or frequency that she's transmitting to that child, and he's resonating off of the mother tone. And that mother tone actually has uh, elements of what we're all really made of. It has no choice because it's part of nature, right? And that ties us to the frequency of the earth to go along with it and everything else. So yeah, I started to really reflect back to the origin of that came from first point of birth, actually.
Yeah, and I mean that's fascinating because um, my I have a son, and you know his
That's
mother's
right.
voice.
That's right.
Unfortunately, his mother's voice wasn't the first voice that he was able to hear. It was mine. But I think just our harmonizing together while he was in the womb brought him comfort. It was so fascinating that he recognized my voice instantly and calmed down. But that initial, kind of tone, that mother tone, uh, do you think like that's the inspiration for how you teach? I remember one of the first times I heard you teach. What fascinated me was you taught from a couple different ways, either teaching through emotion, teaching people how different tones um, evoke different emotions, and then the other thing was you taught using light frequencies. And I'd never uh, seen a music teacher teach from either one of those perspectives. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, now we're talking about the fact that, which is probably the very core of what we're heading towards here. Um, let's start with your voice. Like you have a very soothing voice anyway, for the most part. I mean, I've never heard you when you're angry, and I'm sure it's probably different. But in general, I could see where your child would like gravitate to that and respond to it in a very similar way that a mother tongue would actually be because you speak softly. Well, as it turns out, the whole world, our whole universe is built of tension and release, right? And so, what you heard me doing was really doing a combination of both tension and release. And the end result for those people that were, focused was retainment. That's that was the goal and the principle and the accomplishment. So, and it's long-term retainment because it becomes ingrained into what they are at that point. I get the opportunity to engineer that because, at the end of the day, I'm a nervous system packaged in a body and a consciousness, and so are all these other people. And so when two nervous systems can talk together at the right language, language is not necessarily, we don't really need words. We need tone first. And so at the right tone, creating tension, well, of course, that triggers certain chemicals in the brain that are alarming sometimes, or at least makes you pay attention, right? And then when you give a result, it creates an invitation for safety. And so between those two, just like music, music is tension and release. That's just the nature of things. And so that's pretty much what I was doing because I was conscious of that. Because I realized that the nervous system, well, the human body is, we call it a machine, but it's really not a machine. It's really an orchestra. Every organ, every neuron, every strand of everything that you're made of is an endless improvisation that we call life. And the conductor in this case is consciousness. So you and I right now are doing this thing that hopefully will help other people to become more conscious. But the score, the musical score involved as we look at this is vibration. And so the nervous system is an instrument through which every note of existence has to pass.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think this brought something to mind that I spoke about recently. If I remember correctly, when you break down the Greek translation of organize, it's similar to what we were just speaking about, your organ system and your body harmonizing together to create your life, the tone of your life. Um,
That's right. Yeah. And it's funny you use the word harmonize because um, I think most people think of that word differently than what it really is. Harmonization is the mastery of chaos. And you have to have both, the yin and the yang, in order for life to exist. So it's the mastery of those things. So, just to kind of bring that full circle around, when we talk about two people talking or a person talking to many or many in a group together, to understand what we call sound, you've got to understand the listener.
and the you and I, we both had time working in recording studios, professional recording studios, and one of the fascinating things I love about it is that you learn how to work with the unseen. You're trying to capture this vibration that you can't see at the right spot to evoke the right emotion. So when we speak about these concepts, I think music industry may have been ahead of its time in ways of capturing the invisible, right?
Yeah, that's true. It didn't realize that the nervous system is tunable. It just saw money, which is another form of harmony altogether. But we'll talk about that somewhere else.
You think you could maybe explain a little bit about how different, say, frequency ranges can evoke different types of emotion, like how what type of sensation you get from something in the mid range, where say maybe a human vocal tone naturally lies, or as opposed to higher frequencies or lower frequencies.
Okay, well, here we go then. We ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to tie this into brain waves to go along with it. A thought is a waveform. You know,
Yeah.
that's why, even though we won't go into this discussion too deeply, but there have been some reports of people that have been visited by possible individuals from somewhere else that could hear their thoughts. And to us, it's strange. But to people like us, it's not strange because we know that the thought is a waveform. So if you have the right tools to amplify it, then you can hear it, right? So anyway, that being said, to answer your question, okay, it starts with the delta wave of the brain, right? which is really zero point 0.5 to 4 hertz. And that's kind of the ground of existence. It's the sub bass of the mind. And so a frequency so low that it almost borders stillness, but it's also where healing actually begins, you know? Uh, and then the theta, which is 4 hertz to 8 hertz, it's the portal of imagination. It's some people call it the twilight state. It's borderland between waking and dreaming. You know, it's the rhythm of meditation, which I heard you speak on your last presentation, and intuition, creativity, deep trance. You know, so in this range, the mind actually loosens its grip on logic and begins to see in pictures, not words. That's why I said earlier that we don't necessarily need words to communicate this, right? Um, Artists, mystics, inventors, that's where they live. Alpha waves, 8 hertz to 13 hertz, I think it is. We call it the river of flow. So it's the state of calm alertness, balanced, centered, awake, but not anxious. You know, musically, alpha is the tempo of the heartbeat, and breath is usually about 60 to 100 beats per minute. Is the rhythm of natural coherence. So it's the groove of life, we'll call it, where nothing really feels forced. That's the alpha. Yeah, the beta is like 13 to 30 hertz. The frequency of fire, fast tempo, problem solving, focus, movement, all these things. And so used wisely can, I mean, like in music or sound
Yeah.
treatment, it empowers you. But if you use it too excessively, then it will exhaust you. And so, you know, I'm going to use a term that I coined, but being a Zen engineer, uh, you understand, you know, the beta as a tool. You know, it's never home, because if you stay home with it, yeah, you'll lose them. Um, and then the gamma, which is 30 to 100 hertz, that's the crown frequency. You know, gamma is like pure electricity, upper harmonics. Um, of awareness. So musically, gamma correlates to, like, you know, bright harmonic sounds, fast rhythmic modulations, shimmering overtones, sounds that are luminous,
Yeah.
maybe almost beyond the ear's grasp, but you can feel it. So it's the resonance of revelation. That's that's why, you know, especially during, you know, special times in religious organizations like Christmas or whatever, the type of music that they have usually has a lot of, you know, bell tones and higher in it. It's by design. So that's, you know, that's pretty much my take on, you know, the fusion of our frequencies that we have here in the physical realm with our brainwave frequencies and our conscious state at the same time. So that creates the entrainment principle. Rhythm meets biology.
Yeah. No, I love it, and I like to live in that space too. And honestly, like sound has been my key to understanding, uh, you know, spirituality, because
Right,
it gives me a framework to understand these concepts that poetically may lead you further away if you don't have the context to know what you're reading. Um, and but you know what do you think it means that we have so many unnatural competing frequencies uh, around us throughout our day? You know, you walk into one store, you know, it's super high up tempo. Then you walk into another store, very soothing, very, you know, and then you step out. But within all of these, the common thread may be a lot of, say, Wi-Fi frequencies or radiation rays or what have you. Like, what do you think it means that we have so many competing frequencies in our world today that are unnatural?
Okay, well, I guess some people just call that noise, right?
Well, yeah,
But but um, you know, let's look at pure noise for a minute to kind of come up with an answer on that. White noise really is every frequency represented, right? And so um, what we do, especially like you're what I call a sonic alchemist, because what you've learned to do, even in your life and in the music that you work with, you've learned how to take that chaos, white noise, and organize it either by doing it, of course, in a peaceful environment like a studio, which is kind of like a temple, right? Or when you get into life, uh, placing yourself by being aware of those environments and what kind of noise is happening there, placing yourself in and out of those to create a certain balance for your existence. And so it's really about managing that. Uh, all all frequencies for people like us, although some people may call it noise, well, we call it a tool. It's something that we can use because we know how to organize it, even within our consciousness, right? That's why, when I'm driving in the rain and my windshield wipers are making this squeaky noise or whatever, oh, well, damn, there's a song. I've organized it. And even when the brakes have to get stepped on, or being in an office and hearing office machines and all of a sudden how they groove together, or a construction site, or I could keep going. Yeah, because you woke me up on that one. But all those noises really become something that we can organize. And so what you and I are trying to do is to get people everywhere, everyone to be able to, because this is the time that we're in, to be aware of those noises and learn to organize them into your consciousness so that you can organize your reality.
yeah, agree. And I like the way you put that. It was beautifully said. And you touched on something that sparked something within me, and that talking about how the studio is a temple. And I know a lot of people may not view it in that way, but I started to make a correlation between uh, being in nature or being in meditation and being in a studio. Now, for a lot of people who've never been in a studio, it is this this room that's designed to allow you to hear things more accurately. So it's kind of the same way as if you were, say like maybe had enough time to sit quietly to yourself. And when you're able to hear things more accurately, you're able to place things um, more accurately, right? In a way that speaks to people more profoundly. And when you don't have that space to discern or discriminate between all of the different sounds that you're hearing, and it all sounds like noise, then your life, uh, could feel very chaotic. And I think that's kind of what you were alluding to, right?
Absolutely, because especially I hear more men than women say this, but I'm just looking for some peace, man. Okay, well, this is the way to get that peace. It's not. It's about changing your perception of your environment that you're in, being able to hear it a certain way. And when I say hear, I'm not talking about your ears. I'm talking about your total being,
Yeah.
because your body, it's crazy. When I became aware of that part, your body is made of what percentage of water? 80.
Yes. In that
Yeah,
range. Yeah.
80% of water. But like when you take any vibration, we see it a lot in pure tones, but the water takes on a shape when you administer something to it.
Cymatics.
Somatics.
Yeah.
And so we're a somatic instrument ourselves. Any sound that comes across us goes through our whole being, and it either creates a very structured shape because it's harmonic, or it's broken up because it's you know some other type of noise or chaos. And the truth of the matter is, You got to have both. So, but good practices, I guess you could say, for dealing with sonic design in your life is like beginning the day with a tone or something like that helps to calibrate. Uh, you have midday modulations that can happen with energy dips, and maybe add some rhythm. Um, Drum softly on your desk. Believe it or not, it's just as effective as playing some instrument in terms of that self and that being. Uh, the evening stuff, close the day with silence, because silence is an instrument. Silence becomes more an instrument when you apply this thing we call listening. That's the ultimate piece, right?
Yeah. So
And then you have a spatial reset. Tune your environment once a week to something. Maybe play a solfeggio tones, maybe, or 528 hertz, which is joy, or those kind of things. They're emotional. So that's kind of where I get off on that.
yeah, so it's essentially a source of nourishment for you.
My whole life has become a meditation at this point. It used to be, when I was, I don't know, 18 or whatever, I'd hang out in libraries and read about transcendental meditation. And boy, I'd like to be able to do that. And then I'd try some things and, kind of failed because I'd get all these disruptions and stuff. And somewhere in my life, the disruptions were not effective anymore because I realized that I'm living my meditation, because I've learned how to take this chaos and organize it into harmony when needed. Yeah.
And for those of you who've never seen James at work, if you think about what this kind of reminds me of is, you see indigenous folks using instruments to induce transcendental states, right? But if you watch uh, James perform, he performs every genre with uh, just about every age group. He's super popular in the Dallas Fort Worth area. Lots of different musicians love to have him hop in on shows that they play. Well, maybe he could speak to himself going into some of those trance-like states, because he definitely can go into a 20-minute solo, and, and nobody cares. Like, everybody's just okay with it. Like, it's coming from a pure place. Like, there's no ego. Everyone likes what you bring. They like that you're able to do that, and it's so natural. And musicians don't feel intimidated by you doing that at all. So maybe you could speak to yourself being in some of those states on stage.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's funny because when I get done doing a performance, I don't remember a thing about what I did. It's like, that wasn't me, but it was me. It was my inner me, that actually came out. And so, again, I guess my summary on that whole thing is because I realized that, again, throughout my life, there's been lots of tension and release, right? But the cool thing about, dealing with tension and chaos is that, okay, so you have these chemicals that get triggered, uh, the alarming states and that stuff like that. The nervous system actually reacts to it. And guess what? The nervous system actually has a memory because it's tied to your neurons. And then when you have resolution in life, on things or whatever, then it has a memory of that too, and it can rewind that and spit it back out because it's a memory. And I think that's what happens on stage. Is this is all just a result of what my being and my spirit has gone through, not just throughout the day, but throughout maybe a good period of my life, you know. And I just kind of took us all there because in my mind, at that point, well, you guys are part of my reality.
Yeah, and it's so funny because those of us who see it for the first time, we're like, "Whoa!" Like, "Wow, what the heck is happening?" And then those of us who know you, we're like, Oh damn, James is he's doing it again. Like, but it's fun to watch. It's and it's so fascinating that uh, you've learned your way of tapping into this space that so many people are very desperate and sometimes causing themselves harm to try to tap into. And of course, I know you've had to work for it. You've spent countless hours, honing your skills as a musician. But it's so amazing to see you get to tap into that space, so frequently.
Well, you specified as a musician, and so now what's happened in my life, because when you introduced me, you also introduced me as a businessman, and several other things. Those are all everything is music to me now. Everything. I've learned how to harmonize businesses, and sometimes when I say a term like that, a lot of people tilt their head to the side like a dog or something. But it's true. You can harmonize businesses. You can harmonize governments. Along as long as the listeners involved will allow it, right? Um, a good lesson I learned from that takes me all the way back to the company Yamaha. Remember what their symbol is? They have like this circle, right? And in the circle is three tuning forks. That's crazy, right?
Yeah,
Because they don't just make musical instruments; they make trains and construction
vehicles.
equipment and jet skis.
Yeah.
Well, how did that happen, right? And so I went all the way back into their very first history. It was a guy. His name was Mr. Yamaha, and he in 1879 had a vision, and it starts with vision. He had a vision that he wanted to export. That was it. But he was a watchmaker. That's really what he was. He liked to tinker with things. But remember that dealing with watches is also dealing with time, which is dealing with some kind of harmonization of movement. So this guy he was equipped to do this. So anyway, he comes up with the first pump organ, and he sells like 76 of them to the United States, and that was like a lot of money to them, back then, like the equivalence of $1 billion, really. He starts Yamaha Corporation with it, and then learns about Germans and pipe organs, and decides he's going to make these pipe organs. So, can I have another billion, please? Right? Happens. From there, he hears about this guy in the United States called Henry Ford, who made this motor. So he takes a shot at making a motor, but it wasn't big enough to move a car. Oh well, I'll just slap it on a bicycle. Okay, and then from there I could put it on a boat. And now there's this stuff called fiberglass, so I can take fiberglass and make jet skis out of it. And now there's this, you see what I'm saying? It just kind of exploded, but they're letting you know when you look at that symbol that everything that they do was born from understanding harmonization. And so that, for lack of a better term, blew my mind to where my mind can't come back together again, because it's like I see everything as something that I can harmonize or organize, right? In some kind of way in my reality.
That's super fascinating, and I say that because you hear all too often in stories like that from people who created these companies and these products that have withstood the test of time, so to speak. 100 plus years. They were from a business sense, or from a not even from a business sense, but from a creative space with the tools that they had available to them, which were building things. Uh, they were able to orchestrate or harmonize things in ways that was very, what's the word I'm looking for, ahead of its time in a way.
Yeah, no, it was definitely ahead of its time because, but that's what happens and will happen again and again and again when, a collection of people have the same heartbeat,
Yes.
you know.
So yeah, so what do you think, like, so do you think humanity is moving through a kind of a collective rite of passage? I like to use that because that's a phrase that I'm really working with, and and are we kind of like being asked to remember, like kind of who we truly are to kind of get through this, and us kind of getting back in tune? How could us getting back in tune with who we are, Earth's frequency, the cosmos, like how could that maybe help usher us through this, say, rite of passage?
Yeah. Um, Again, like when we first began, which is long before you and me, there still was two things that were in existence, and that was, safety and chaos. And so, uh, creation actually breathes between those two opposites. That's my best way of expressing that. So every heartbeat is like an expansion and a contraction, right? Every wave has a crest and a trough. So we're just talking about nature, and this is the nature of things, right? Every melody is a combination of tension and release. So the duality it's not a flaw in the design, it is the design. So without dissonance, you can't have resolution. Without chaos, you can't have harmony because it has no meaning. And without all those things, you can't have evolution.
So what I hear is your peace, and the peace that you can offer to others is you've mastered your space in a way where you can see how the two correlate with one another. Therefore, you can play with the stress and the tension without them uh, pulling you in either direction.
You and I are into music, and we love to play it one way or another. And if you can see everything as that, then you can play it. And when you play it, you find joy.
Yeah, yeah. And so, in the heart of like your vast wealth of experience and knowledge, is there something here that you wanted to share that I may not have thought to touch on?
Well, I think that I think you and I could probably talk all day, and and it's all around this stuff. So there's a lot of things, but I can just expound upon some things to help solidify, the language in which we're speaking right now, which is the language of the nervous system, right? Um, the word consonance comes to mind as an opposite of dissonance, yin and yang, right? So, two or more frequencies not necessarily being a sound, but a cycle of something. Because remember, if we go back before mankind, if we go back before planets, you know, it did say in sacred writings that it started with a sound. But there was a silent sound first before that. You know, that's right. Which we talked about with thought having a waveform, right? And somehow it was able to, within its oscillation, create matter. So when two or more frequencies vibrate in ratios that are in alignment, 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3, the waveforms blend into like a single stable tone. We're not just talking about music, we're talking about life. Um, but this is what the ear finds as being pleasant because we're made in that design to be able to hear that, or we call that being in tune, right? Uh, but beneath the physics lies something way older. It's biology of safety. Safety is triggered through your spine. People overlook the skeletal structure that we have. They think it's just how we walk or hold our arms up or something. But it's a lot more sacred than that in its design. And so, when we talk about safety, those are things that we learn from the very primitive times that we first began. Before we were even in this form, uh, there were normally low frequencies that had expected results and things like that. And so the spine becomes more comfortable in communicating with the nervous system at that point. And that's consonance, right? Um, so very predictable, in other words. So the human ear evolved to be able to trust consonance. And that brings us back to when we talked about the mother, right? The infant calms down when they hear the harmonic voice of their mother, or in this case, their dad. A tribe uh, unites together to the drone of a chant, right? So these frequencies tell the body, there's no danger here. But then on the other side, okay, dissonance comes, right? And waveforms that collide, instead of merging together. So intervals that actually beat against each other or create interference. It sounds like a trembling in the air. Makes you nervous, uncomfortable. Physically, dissonance is basically interpreted as instability. But psychologically, it's tension. But spiritually, it's an invitation. It's an invitation because, if you don't have prolonged dissonance, because that's nothing but stress, um, and the nervous system loses rhythm and so forth. But in small doses, we can call that vitality. That's what I conclude.
I love it. I love it.
We'll have to talk again, though.
We will, and we'll have to do some sound demonstrations too. Whip out a keyboard or something, or share a graphic EQ on the screen and really show how we could manipulate frequencies to really make your experience pleasurable or stressful. Um, and that could take this conversation in a whole nother direction, but that was one of the mind-blowing things I experienced working in a professional studio around engineers who were very seasoned and had been doing that job throughout the evolution of music in America. And you're really understanding how you can manipulate frequencies and understanding what resonant frequencies are and how you can enhance um, pleasure or tension or just by dialing in frequencies. We're not even talking about playing an instrument. It's just just singling out certain frequencies within your bandwidth.
Yeah, and I guess another conversation we could end up having, revolves around that whole battle that people have about, analog versus digital, right? And the truth to the matter is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as it actually triggers the right balance of these things that we're talking about. You're going to learn and grow from it.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
so sound's not the effect of those things. It's not the effect of consciousness either. It's the architecture of it. So we
Wow.
find all kinds of ways to create that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every thought is a chord. Every heartbeat is a drum. And when you see people at a concert, they've measured this before. All their heartbeats are actually in sync, right? How's that happening? It amazes me, but it makes me know that what we're talking on, even though some people might think, "Oh, this is intangible stuff," no, it's very tangible. It's measurable.
It is, and it's mind-boggling.
Yeah,
So, yeah, before we get out of here, like, is there I want to one mention your music school and that you have in Mansfield and let you share a little bit about that, and then also just something that you're optimistic about, given all of what you know, that you could share with the rest of the world.
yeah. I'm optimistic that even though some people feel like we're in dark times right now, everybody needs to know that we have to go through this. We are evolving. It's what's happening. And if you don't believe that, go find yourself a 4-year-old and talk to him and realize that that's not the same kind of 4-year-old that was around when I was that age. Dude, the other day I had because I teach music, I had a 4-year-old, taught him major scale a week before, and I said, "Hey, can you play that major scale for me that I taught you last week?" You know what that kid did? He looked at me and said, "You do realize that I'm only 4 years old, don't you? When I get home, first I have to go play with my friends, and then I have to clean up my room, and I have to take a bath. I don't have time for this." I was like, "I know what you are," and we'll get in that conversation one day too about old souls,
Yeah, yeah,
new souls, and young souls.
uh huh,
That was an old soul talking to me.
yeah.
but it let me know that you know, the way the world is changing, it's repopulating itself with what it needs in order to get to a better place. We may not see it all in our generation, but they will see it in theirs as long as we keep laying the groundwork.
Well said, well said. And James, my friend, is like always, it's a pleasure getting the chance to catch up with you.
Oh, this was great.
Yeah,
This was
yeah,
really great.
yeah.
So,
And I'm gonna where could people find you if they have children who are interested in attending your school? Um,
okay. Well, I'm partnered with a group called Mansfield Music Mentors, and so we have a studios in downtown Mansfield, but that's also where I teach what I've always taught, which is engineering, audio engineering as well. So it's like another business nested into that same building with other private students, and so I teach people how to produce. I teach people how to find their inner voice so that they can compose and create things, and all that happens there. So they can find me there. If you want to find me live doing what Steve has been talking about, I pick a couple spots, but one of them is this place called Terra Bones, which is a Cajun restaurant in Fort Worth, and I do this whole one man show there. Right, so I bring out like six keyboards, sequencers, and all that stuff, and I make them all talk to each other, and with my stand up guitar, and I get to doing the thing, man. And it creates this whole energy, at least for that moment, for that time.
I love it. I love it. I got to come out and check you out. I haven't seen you play in a while.
Yeah,
It's,
I'll be
it's
there on the 17th of this month, on October. If
okay.
you
In the
like to come
evening.
out, 6 to 9.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, James, this has been a pleasure, and I'm gonna hit stop record.
Okay.